where we studied Auchenorrhyncha communities in grasslands. My close collaborator on this project is Czech, a student. More precisely, the habitat which we studied is called by vegetation scientists as semi-dry basiphilous grasslands. This is how it looks like. I think also from the photo it's clear that it's quite species-rich vegetation with many species of vascular plants. Arguably, it's fine and small spatial grain. It's the most species-rich vegetation in the world. Of course, at large scale, tropical forests are much more species-rich, but if you focus on small grain, like 1 square meter or 15 square meters, the European grasslands are extremely species-rich. They are also a refuge for many threatened plants and arthropods. All European species of orchids are confined to grassland habitats. There are no epiphytic orchids in Europe. Also many butterflies, water terns, spiders, and of course also leafhoppers are confined to this habitat. The habitat was created by man. It's anthropogenic, but it has a very long history of dating back so many centuries, maybe even millennia. That's why we call him semi-natural. It depends on regular management by man. In Europe, it is mainly by grazing, by cattle or sheep, or mowing for hay. And one of the problems for the conservation of this precious habitat nowadays is its abandonment, because there are no more economic reasons for to keep it, except for nature conservation or biodiversity conservation. And if you drop the management, then the vegetation slowly moves towards forest and you lose the biodiversity. Or there is another problem going to the next extreme. If you use the grassland too intensively, like if you put too many cattle or too many sheep, or if you cut the grass too frequently, then you also degrade the grassland, you lose the species richness and you lose the threatened species. So the aims of our study were to analyze responses of several groups of arthropods to traditional management practices and abandonment in semi-dry basiphilous grassland in one of the regions in the Czech Republic, in the West Carpathians, in a controlled experiment. It's part of PhD study of my student Martin Vašíček, who is a specialist in true bugs in Heteroptera. So true bugs were one of the groups which we studied along with phytophagous beetles, arachnids, and orthopterans. I will focus in my talk just on leafhoppers, which I identified, and we analyzed the data together with Martin for his presentation. So why Auchenorrhyncha can serve as a good model group in grassland ecology? There are many reasons which were summarized in a very nice review by Robert Biedermann and other colleagues. Auchenorrhyncha in temperate grasslands are very abundant. It's one of the most abundant groups of arthropods which you can find in grasslands. They are also very species rich, and they are reacting fast to changes in the vegetation structure and composition maybe faster than even the plants. And at least for Europe, the taxonomy and ecology of Auchenorrhyncha is well known. There have been quite a few studies on the impact of management in grasslands on Auchenorrhyncha, carried out since 1950s or 1960s, mainly in the United Kingdom, Germany, Poland. From the studies, I would acknowledge just a series of papers by Michael Morris from the United Kingdom, which were situated in a similar habitat to our habitat, and Mike Morris also used controlled experiments, and he was perhaps the first one who noticed that some species of Auchenorrhyncha or different species of Auchenorrhyncha differ in their reaction to management type and intensity. So what we know or don't know about Auchenorrhyncha and management, so from the previous studies it's clear that management is one of the most important drivers for Auchenorrhyncha communities in grasslands. But the responses are quite complex and they strongly vary according to management intensity and vegetation types. There are quite many types of grasslands. And also controlled experiments have been still quite rare, much rarer than observational studies. So our study was located in the Czech Republic, which lies just in the center of Europe. In its eastern part, we studied two localities, which were about 30 kilometers apart. This is how the places looked like. So both were placed in a landscape with small hills and a mosaic of grasslands and forests. The plant community, the plant composition was very similar in the two sides. There were about up to 59 plant species per 1 square meter, so it was quite species rich. And this was our experimental design. At each locality, we had a block of 20 plots, which differed in the grassland management. There were 4 treatments. In the center of the plot, there was a fence, and inside of the fence there were plots which were mown or cut once a year in July. There were plots which were left abandoned, so not managed at all. And outside of the fence, there were plots which were managed by sheep grazing, and some of them were also burned in winter. Burning is also used traditionally for management of grasslands in many parts of Europe, but much less extensively than, for example, in the prairies of North America. This experiment was founded in 2004, these experimental plots, by Jan Mládek, who is a vegetation scientist at Palacký University in Olomouc in the Czech Republic. He wanted to monitor the changes of the vegetation due to management, and he invited us to study also insects on these plots. So these are some pictures of the plots. You can see the fence and one of the abandoned plots with relatively tall grassland. These are sheep grazing outside of the fence. This is how the place, one of the places looked like after seasonal grazing and cutting. This was the cut plot next to the abandoned plot. This is a photo of winter burning. This is how it looked like when it finished. And this burning was applied just once in 3 years, so it was not very intensive. We took arthropod samples by a suction sampler 4 times a year in 3 consecutive years, 10 years after the experiment was founded. So we were sure that the vegetation was stable at that time due to management. We recorded the sward height, the vegetation height, with a drop disc, which is a kind of instrument which is used for this. We recorded vegetation cover, plant species richness, and plant species composition in the plots. In total, we recorded 94 species of Auchenorrhyncha in 4,000 specimens. The both localities had very similar species rich, and also the number of specimens was similar at both places. And as you can see from these rarefaction curves, we probably collected most of the species which occur at the sites. The most abundant species of Leafhoppers, to show you also some pictures of Leafhoppers. I'm proud to be able to use the pictures of Gernotbunds, our Austrian colleague. So mostly these communities are dominated by cicadelids Leafhoppers, mainly deltacephaline Leafhoppers, but there are also some megophthalmine and Aphrodine species, and the second most species-rich and most abundant family are delphasids. And this is how the abundance or the densities of Auchenorrhyncha differed among the different experimental treatments. To test the differences, we used linear mixed effect models, which filtered out the effect of the locality. And as you can see from the plot, the most Auchenorrhyncha specimens were found in the abandoned plot, not managed plots. This could be pretty well explained by the vegetation height or plant biomass. We can use the vegetation height as a proxy for plant biomass. And it was also negatively correlated with plant species richness because these abandoned plots were the most species poor in plants. Yeah, this upper graph shows the correlation between the vegetation height and the number of specimens of Auchenorrhyncha. The relationship was almost linear. In the lower graph, you can see how the vegetation height varied across the year from spring to autumn. I would just point out to the differences. So in the abandoned plot, which is the green curve above in the plot, the vegetation was the highest throughout all of the year. In the crazed and also crazed and burned plot, which is the light green curve, in the lower part of the graph, the vegetation was constantly low throughout the year, and the blue line shows the cut plots, the mown plots, and there you can see a change, reduction of the vegetation due to the cut in July, which may affect some species of leafhoppers and planthoppers. I will come back to it later. This plot shows the differences in the Auchenorrhyncha species richness among the experimental treatments. The differences were not so pronounced, but the grace plots had significantly more species than the abundant and cut plots, but we could not find an easy explanation for this based on any factor which we measured. We were also interested in the differences in species composition. For this, we used ordination analysis, which also filtered out the effect of the localities. The influence of the management was statistically significant. It explained more than 30% of the variation of the species composition between the plots. There were species on the right side of the plot which positively reacted to abandonment, strongly preferred abandoned plots like these ones. Then there were other species which were clearly dependent on the regular management, like these ones. And in this group, we could distinguish species which preferred grazing and burning. There was not much difference between these burned plots and plots which were just grazed. The species composition was very similar. Maybe because the burning, as I mentioned, was applied only once in 3 years, so it was not very intensive. And there were species which reacted positively to cutting. And of course, we were asking why these different species react differently to the management. Partly it was surely because of the hostlands. Most of the species which preferred grazing or abandonment were grass feeders, while these species which reacted positively to cutting were often dicot feeders, feeding on herbs or forbs. There were also species which did not tolerate cutting. It was not clear from the ordination analysis we did, but we used another complementary technique, indicator species analysis. It's type, which is called multi-level pattern analysis, and it can show you groups of species which are shared by different types of treatments. So at least these 4 species clearly preferred either abandoned plots or graze plots, but avoided cut plots. Then, to go deeper, we also had a look at community-weighted means. We used a trait-based approach to be able to generalize a bit the results. These 2 analyses of the host plant preference confirmed our impressions from the ordination analysis. In the cut plots, there were more species feeding on forbs, on dicot herbs, while on abandoned and grass grazing graze plots, there were more grass feeders. There were more monophagous and mostly brachyptera species in the abandoned plots, and the vice versa, more oligophagous and polyphagous species and macropterous species in the managed plots, which we expected because Auchenorrhyncha react to the disturbance better if they are adapted with better dispersal or Macroptera species and Polyphagous species better cope with the disturbance and better colonize the disturbed habitats. We expected the same for the body size and the number of generation or volatilism, but here the patterns were not fitting our predictions. We expected that the largest Leafhopper species will be found in abandoned plots, and also the species with the least number of generation will be found in the abandoned plots, but this did not. This was not shown, so probably because the management was not very intensive. The grazing was quite light, and the cutting was just once a year. And there were also some differences in the representation of overwintering stages in the community, eggs, nymphs, or adults. From the conservation value, we used the classification of the Leafhopper species in different IUCN categories of the national red list of threatened invertebrates from the Czech Republic. And from this point of view, the cut plots, the mown plots, had more significant representation of threatened species than the other treatments. But when we made an ordination analysis of including just the threatened species, so this graph includes not only Leafhoppers but also other threatened species of arthropods which we found at the plots, like orthopterans or truebucks. You can see that threatened species of Planthoppers and Leafhoppers, which are framed in black, can be found at both sides of the graph, either abandoned or managed. This means that also the abandoned plots are significant for Auchenorrhyncha species conservation. So I'm coming finally to conclusions. We found that the effect of the management type on the Auchenorrhyncha abundance, species richness, and species and also functional group composition was significant, even at a fine scale. Yeah, maybe I forgot to mention that when I showed the plan of the experiment, that the plots were 5 meters by 5 meters large, which is not very big. And we started the experiment or the sampling. We were not sure if this grain is enough to show any differences, but we were surprised from the result that the differences were really pronounced. And the only difference was, the only exception was the grazing combined with burning, which led to very similar Auchenorrhyncha communities like grazing alone. Second point is that many species, including rare and threatened ones, clearly prefer either managed sites, managed grasslands, or abandoned plots. And for nature conservation, this would probably mean that some kind of spatial mosaic of the different types of management, grazing, mowing, but also fallowing, which means a temporary abandonment. I would like to stress that the abandonment needs to be temporary, so just for several years or 10 years at maximum, because if you leave the grassland abandoned for a longer time, then you lose even those species which we found in abandoned plots due to succession. So this combination of different types can be recommended to keep the maximum species diversity of Auchenorrhyncha in the grasslands in our area under study. So I would like to acknowledge my colleagues. So first of all, Jan Mladek, the botanist, the vegetation scientist who founded the plots. Unfortunately, he died a couple of years ago, and he did not see the results of our study. And also Stanislav Rada and Tomáš Kuras, which helped us with sampling and material sorting. And I would like to thank you for your attention.